Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan takes an important step away from its autocratic past with the announcement of its first cabinet since the fall of Omar al Bashir back in April. We hear from our correspondent in Khartoum. Also, South Africa's president reminds xenophobic rioters that other Africans played an important part in the fight against apartheid. Cyril Ramaphosa points to that shared story of unity in a bid to calm days of violence targeting African foreigners in his country. And hold on to your hard-won peace. The message from the Pope as he congratulates and supports Mozambique's recent ceasefire. The Pontiff is in the country at the start of a week-long tour of the continent. But first, after days of deliberation, Sudan's new prime ministers announced the country's first cabinet since the ousting of former longtime strongman Omar al Bashir back in April. Now, the Ministers' Council is part of a power-sharing deal between the generals that took over after Bashir's ouster and pro-democracy demonstrators. Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok's cabinet includes several women and many faces from the revolution. Now, it's a key step in moving the country on from its autocratic past. Naba Mohideen joins us now with more from Khartoum. Naba, now going into this, there had been concerns that the cabinet may not be representative of the story that got the country to this point. Tell us more about who has been named in the end and how people have reacted to Hamdok's choices.
Who has been named are people widely accepted by Sudanese because they youth, women, ethnic diversity, and they are technocrat and experienced. Everyone is on his own specialization, but they are accepted by the people because people were pushing to have just technocrat, not a political shared positions in the ministers' council. So this is the point. People are so happy with the technocrat, and the names also, they were part of the change process. They were defined protesters, some of them, and some of them they were technocrats who were abroad, lived abroad, and they were not allowed to come when al Bashir regime was ruling. So people are so happy with having back those experienced technocrats to serve the country during the transitional period. Especially, they are so happy with the Ministry of the nomination or the choice of the Minister of Information, the Council of the Information and the Culture, who is one of the most popular journalists in the country, and he's a defined protester also. And the Minister of the Finance, also he's a technocrat, very well known, and people are so happy with the Minister of Youth, which is a young lady and qualified one, and Higher Education Minister and Financial. But still, there is two names are not settled down yet, which is the Minister of the Animal Resources and the Infrastructure. So generally, people are so optimistic about the change because they think that finally they have the names that they demanded and they are technocrats. So maybe it will be easier for the transitional period challenges.
Now, the country's formed a sovereign council. Now we've got a ministers' council. What happens next in Sudan's story of moving on from those years under Omar al Bashir?
Yes, it was actually it was very long process for the ministers' council. It was the very big deal of the authorities and the power in the hands of the ministers, according to the political and constitutional accord. So what's next is much easier than in the formation, in the level of formation, which is the legislative council, which should be formed very soon. Nobody named a day or scheduled it, but once it's formed, the legislative council will contain names and lists from different parts. AFC will have 67% in the Legislative Council, and other forces will have 33 including the armed movements. So once it's formed, then officially there is a government in the country. The announcement of Ministers' Council was the first and the most important step, but it will be completed with the formation of the Legislative Council, and then the three councils will meet together, will have the first official meeting as the government of Sudan, and will proceed the work to meet the challenges of the transitional period and to continue.
Thank you very much. Nabat Mohideen there for us in Khartoum. Now, at least 10 people, including one foreigner, have been killed in xenophobic attacks in South Africa over the last 8 days or so. Over 400 people have been arrested and dozens of foreign-owned shops were destroyed in riots around Johannesburg and Pretoria. The violence had led to reprisals against South African businesses elsewhere in Africa and saw Pretoria shut down its diplomatic missions in Lagos and Abuja this week. Nigeria, meanwhile, recalled its High Commissioner to South Africa over the violence. In DR Congo, angry crowds threw rocks at the South African consulate in Lubumbashi. Now, international anger over the riots and the targeting of foreigners in South Africa overshadowed the World Economic Forum currently being held in Cape Town. President Cyril Ramaphosa made a televised address about the unrest on Thursday. Aisha Ishmael joins us now with more on that front. Aisha, did Ramaphosa set out any concrete response to that rioting?
Well, he started off by saying that the country was deeply traumatized by what he called acts of violence and criminality directed against foreign nationals. And he did say that the criminal justice system was standing by and ready to act against any acts of violence and looting and lawlessness. He also reminded South Africans of the role that African countries on the continent played during the dark days of apartheid, and said that these countries helped South Africa achieve the democracy that we have today. He also said that more than 400 people had been arrested since the weekend and condemned the acts of violence against foreign nationals.
Now, it's a pretty tumultuous time for South Africa. Thousands of people also marched to Parliament in Cape Town on Thursday to denounce what some have called the epidemic of femicide in the country. That's killing of women. Ramaphosa also addressed this mounting anger on Thursday. He, in doing so, told protesters that he knew what they were going through, which is a big statement. Did he have anything else to say about the issue?
Well, in South Africa, a woman is killed every 3 hours. So that just goes to show how bad the situation is in South Africa. And this led to thousands of young people marching to Parliament. And President Cyril Ramaphosa was forced then to accept this memorandum. But what he did say was that he would be calling for stronger measures, stronger action to be taken against those found guilty of acts of violence against women and children. He said that he would call for rapists to be given a life sentence, and also for stricter bail conditions for those found or for those arrested for crimes against women and children. Now, we've had a spate of gender-based violence crimes being committed against women and children just in the month of August, which was Women's Month, and that is what made the women of South Africa so angry that they took to the streets yesterday and today to go and vent their anger and call on the president and the government to take stronger action against men who are found guilty of perpetrating acts of violence against women.
Thanks very much. Aisha Ishmael there for us in Cape Town. Well, on day 2 of his week-long tour of Africa, Pope Francis has called on Mozambique to nurture the peace that it has struggled so hard to achieve. The pontiff met with President Filipe Nyusi and the leaders of the Renamo opposition in Maputo on Thursday. The two sides fought a 15-year civil war that only ended in 1992, but only led to a permanent ceasefire last month.
No pope had come to Mozambique since John Paul II more than 30 years ago. Thousands lined the streets of Maputo to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis. Thousands more gathered to listen to the 82-year-old pontiff during an interreligious meeting with young people. He spoke about the two cyclones that killed hundreds of people in Mozambique earlier this year.
Unfortunately, a few months ago, you suffered two cyclones. That is the consequence of the climate disaster that we are living in. Many are already embracing the challenge to protect our common house. Among them, many young people.
The crowd was delighted to see the leader of the world's 1.3 billion Catholics.
It's such a joy. We had never seen him in person. This is a historic date for my generation.
For me, it was very thrilling to perform for the Pope, to express my faith and gratitude for him coming here and meeting all the young people of Mozambique. It's very rewarding.
Earlier, Pope Francis met President Filipe Nyusi. He praised the government and the Renamo opposition for signing a peace deal last month. A 15-year civil war killed 1 million people and ended in 1992, but Renamo had never completely disarmed. The pontiff will address a mass in the National Stadium on Friday before heading off to Madagascar and Mauritius.
And finally, Tebe Magugu has become the first African to win the prestigious LVMH prize for fashion. He picked up the award here in Paris this week, and the 26-year-old South African will receive a €300,000 grant and year-long mentorship from the French luxury conglomerate. He says that he's hoping to use the money to open a studio and employ more creatives back in South Africa. Judges were blown away by his feminine collection for spring and summer 2020, and with good reason, as you can see. He includes a microchip, actually, in every garment that can be used to tell the story of its creation, including everyone who brought it to life. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.